This is a quick overview of dynamic pivot tables in row zero. Dynamic pivot table updates automatically when source data changes, and row zero makes it really easy to create dynamic pivot tables from massive billion row data sets. Let's take a look. So I got a new workbook here. I'm going to bring my data so I can import from file, URL, or Amazon S3, or I can connect directly to my data warehouse or other data sources. For this demo, I'm going to connect to Snowflake. As I mentioned, row zero can pull in massive billion row data sets, and it's powerful enough to pull in entire database tables. So I can just do a simple select star statement here. Click run. This is going to pull in all US domestic flights from 2018, 7.2 million rows. Pulls it nice and quick there. At any point, I can click in here and go back to my query. I can edit my query. I can rerun. I can also schedule an automated update, so it updates automatically. And I'm going to create my pivot table on top of this. So now my pivot table will be live connected to my data warehouse. For this pivot table, I'm going to look at cancels and taxi time at US airports. So I'm going to drag my fields. Go taxi time. Oops. You can see row zero makes it really easy to pull these around. I want to look at flights that are at least 100 miles, just to get the little ones out of the way. Okay, and I want to sort on, oops, I don't want sum of taxi time, I want median of taxi time. So you can see there's a lot of built-in calculations here, and it's really easy to edit this. So you can see what you're doing. If you think you made a mistake, you can go back and easily change it. So we format this. Formatting is super easy. Click in any cell, and it formats the whole column. Okay, so I want to sort on taxi out. And you can see I'm seeing some really small airports here, so I want to filter this to just bigger airports. So I'm going to look at airports that had at least 1,000 cancels in 2018. Okay, I got the big airports here. And I want to build a formula on top of my pivot table. So I want to look at cancel rate. So I'm going to look at sum divided by count. And you can see it's super easy to build column level transformations. You can rename this cancel rate. You can easily format this, and I'm good to go. Okay. So now I want to chart this. So I'm going to select origin. What to do is just click in any of these cells, insert chart. Okay, chart's looking pretty decent there. I want my cancel rate to be right side like that. I can add a label, so I can say cancels and taxi time. Okay, and this pivot chart is now live connected to my pivot table and my original data source. So let's say I decide I want to make this 500 instead of 1,000. I can do that, and it's going to dynamically update my chart. From here, I can also move this pivot table around. If I'm creating, let's say, a dashboard, I can move it around, move it back, and I can easily duplicate it if I want to keep looking at similar sets of data. So let me duplicate the pivot table here. Just click in here, and I can open up the editor now for this pivot table. And this pivot table is also live connected to my data set. I'm going to remove taxis here. I want to look at specific routes. And let's look at the distance, these routes. Okay. And let me remove this filter. Okay, here we go. Format this new. I don't want sum of distance, I want median of distance. Just get a sense of how long that route typically is. You can see my cancel rate formula maintained through all of that. So I added columns, I removed columns from my pivot table, and I still have my cancel rate, which is pretty cool. Now I'm going to pivot my pivot table. This is useful for analyzing calculated fields on top of your pivot table. So row 0 makes it super easy. I'm going to pivot my pivot table right here. And I'm going to look at that calculated field. So I'm going to look at the cancel rate here. And let's look at each airport. I'm going to look at the spread of cancel rates for each of their routes. So I'm going to look at the min and max cancel rates. Have that here. And let's look at the spreads. I'm just going to subtract max minus min spread. And I can format these to be percentages. And I want to just look at the big airports again. So let me go back here and filter to, let's look at least 50 cancels on those routes just to get the more popular routes. So you can see now I'm seeing those larger airports that you would recognize. Okay, as you can see, you can pretty quickly create dynamic dashboards and pivot tables and dynamic charts that are live connected to your data. One last thing I wanted to show is exporting to data warehouse. So I can take any of these pivot tables or any of the data in the sheet at any point, and I can, if I really like what I have and I want to get it back to my data warehouse, I can do that to create a new table in my data warehouse of that specific pivot table. So there you have it. Row 0 pivot tables are truly dynamic, and they're dynamic in 4 ways. They're dynamic with source data, so they auto-update when your source data changes. They're dynamic within the pivot table. You can easily edit, format, filter, and sort your pivot table. They're dynamic with output. You can build formulas on top of the pivot table. You can build pivot charts. You can pivot a pivot table. You can write back to your data warehouse, and all of those things dynamically update with your source data. And they're dynamic with size, and that's really the big unlock with row 0. Row 0 spreadsheets can handle data sets 1,000 times bigger than traditional spreadsheets like Excel and Google Sheets, so you can pivot entire database tables or massive files with ease. You can try row 0 for free, so get started and see why row 0 is the best spreadsheet for big data.